By the time the bakery switched its neon sign from "Close it" to "Fresh loaves," Rowan had already walked the length of Willow Ridge twice. He liked to be first to the day before the vans coughed awake, before the coffee line stretched to the door, before anyone had time to decide what he was. In those quiet minutes, the town was only brick and sky and birds tugging at threads for their nests. No one judged a man for watching birds. Rowan was 50-something in years and far older in miles. His beard was a chalky gray that curled in stubborn directions. His coat had a torn lining that he stitched with fishing line and patience. People said he smelled like last week's rain. He did, sometimes. He slept under the old train trestle, where the air kept the same damp memory all season. He carried a dented tin cup clipped to his belt and a canvas messenger bag that had been cream-colored once. Inside were the things he refused to sell or lose. A folded photograph with sunburned edges, a pencil stub wrapped in thread, and a small notebook filled with neat block letters, lists of the days he had done something useful. On hard mornings he flipped to any page and read, helped Mrs. Geller find her terrier, returned a lost wallet, carried boxes for the young woman in the red coat, told the boy in the sweatshirt to breathe, count, and try again. People did not always want his help, but he offered it anyway. He believed usefulness was a kind of shelter. If he could be a roof for 10 minutes, the rain felt lighter when it inevitably came. "Move along, sir," the cafe manager said, opening the door with a careful friendliness reserved for stray dogs. "Please don't stand so close to the window." "I'm moving," Rowan said, and moved. He never argued. Arguing used up the day too quickly. At the grocery, a boy in a varsity jacket nudged his friend and tilted his chin at Rowan. "He's back," the boy said. "Captain Patchwork, watch your pockets." Rowan pretended not to hear it, the way he pretended not to hear thunder when he had nowhere dry to go. He picked up the cigarette butt someone had dropped next to the ash can, pinched out the ember between his fingers, and placed what was left in the bin. He didn't smoke. He just didn't like small fires becoming bigger ones. He drifted toward the store's automatic doors because it was warm inside, and the fluorescent aisle lights were their own kind of sun. Sometimes the security guard would nod him through, let him stand by the carts until his fingers thawed. Sometimes not. Today the guard met his eyes and said, "Buy the carts only, friend," and Rowan nodded, as if the man had offered him a seat by the fireplace. He was there when the card machine began to chirp. "Declined," it said. It always said it in capitals, as if shouting made it truer. The sound drew heads like a bell. The man at the register was clean in the way of expensive laundry. His overcoat was dark and simple, and cut so well even Rowan could tell it had been measured to a body, not pulled from a rack. The man's jaw tightened, then loosened, like he was teaching it to pretend. The cashier, a woman with faded tattoos of daisies on her wrist, shifted from foot to foot. "Do you have another card, sir?" she asked. The man handed over a second card. Machine chirp. Declined. Then a third card. Same verdict. A tiny, nervous cough fluttered through the line. "Oh, come on," a woman near the magazine said. "3 cards? I have 1, and I make it work." A teenager snorted. "Rich guy cosplay. It's a thing." The man in the coat smiled. A practiced, public smile that didn't reach his eyes. "There must be a bank error," he said calmly. He pulled his phone, then remembered something and tucked it away. His ears had gone a little pink. Rowan watched him, the way you watch a tightrope walker wobble before the pole steadies, curious, then protective. The cashier offered to suspend the order. The man shook his head. No, please." The milk and bread, at least. I'll come back for the rest." He kept his voice light, but the checkout conveyor had become a stage, and everyone in the bleachers had paid with judgment. The boy in the varsity jacket whispered something that made his friend laugh too loudly. Someone behind them lifted a phone, recording. Rowan's hand found his tin cup. He did not plan to move. He moved anyway. He stepped to the end of the lane, where the bagging station held 2 paper bags, a stack of coupons, and a pair of blue plastic tongs for ice. The security guard saw him and started forward, then hesitated. Rowan tipped the cup over his palm. Coins cascaded quarters and dimes, and the brave applause of nickels. He counted without looking. $2.17, a 5 crumpled mouse small, and 3 pennies he'd kept, because they looked like old sunlight. He placed the money on the belt, humble as bread. "For the milk," Rowan said. His voice wasn't grand. Grand breaks easily. His was the voice you use to ask for salt at a shared table. The crowd sound changed. Not silence. Something more like a held breath. The man in the coat blinked, surprise cracking his careful smoothness. "Aye, sir. I can't take." "You don't take it," Rowan said, gesturing at the cashier. "She does. You walk out without that milk. You'll wish you hadn't." A baby somewhere hiccuped a complaint. Someone by the candy rack said, "Well, I'll be." The cashier looked from the money to Rowan to the man in the coat. She did the math of embarrassment and mercy and store policy. Then she reached for the milk and the bread, rang them through, and slid them into a paper bag. Her cheeks had gone the kind of red that means a person is trying to be brave without looking like they're trying. The man took the bag, shaking his head softly. "You shouldn't have done that. People keep saying that," Rowan said, "and I keep doing it." The varsity boy muttered, "Hero complex." His friend said, "Shut up." The phone lowered an inch. "I'll repay you," the man said. "Immediately. I just need tomorrow," Rowan interrupted. "Or never. Either way, you'll remember. That's the important part." He tipped his cap, which was not really a cap at all, but a piece of knit fabric he had persuaded into that shape. Then he stepped back to his square by the carts. The machine quieted. The moment broke apart into smaller ones. People swiped, bagged, left. But the day had shifted. Just a degree, like a door unlocked while everyone was looking the other way. The security guard came over, slower than before. "You can't be asking customers for money," he whispered. But there was no heat in it. "I didn't," Rowan said. He pointed to the belt where his coins had been. "I was buying milk. New rule?" The guard's mouth twitched. "Just don't make me explain this in a meeting, okay? Wouldn't dream of it." He stayed another 10 minutes to let his hands thaw fully. He liked the way the light slanted through the plastic roof of the cart corral, turning cheap metal into cathedral lines. Then he went. Outside, the air had turned from morning to noon without asking permission. He headed down Maple, past the barber with the open sign that was always crooked, past the antique shop with a window full of teacups and no customers, toward the bus station where the benches were hard and the pigeons courteous. He saved half a peanut butter sandwich from the soup kitchen for a woman under the timetable who wore her grief like armor. He gave his scarf to a man who wouldn't meet his eyes. Useful, he told himself. Be useful. He was not 2 blocks from the station when the man in the dark coat appeared again, walking with the careful determination of someone catching a plane he might miss. "Sir?" the man called. "Please, sir." Rowan stopped. The man held out a crisp bill. Not an apology, not a trophy, just a square of solved logistics. "You don't need to," Rowan said. I do, the man replied. His voice had loosened. Not for the milk, for the way you did it. You didn't turn it into a spectacle. Rowan smiled crookedly. No one applauds a nail for holding up a house. So, refrain. The man exhaled a laugh that sounded like air escaping a too-tight collar. My name is Ethan Vale, he said. He did not add CEO or founder or anything that would make other people stand straighter. He seemed tired of those words. May I buy you lunch? Rowan's stomach said yes, loud enough to make him blush. There's a church hall 2 blocks down that serves stew on Thursdays. I was thinking, somewhere you choose. I just chose, Rowan said gently. Then, because the man looked disappointed in a way that wasn't theatrical, he added, but there's a diner next to it, and their coffee is better than their reputation. They walk together the way strangers do when both are pretending not to notice this is unusual. Inside the diner, a waitress with a pencil tucked behind her ear looked at Rowan, then at Ethan, then at the space between them where an explanation might live. Rowan slid into a booth. Ethan slid across from him, careful with his coat like it might run if he turned his back. They ordered. Coffee for both. Stew for Rowan, he'd eat it, even if it came from the church hall a half-hour later. A sandwich for Ethan that he pushed aside when it arrived, appetite and anxiety canceling each other out. Thank you, Ethan said again, when the cups were down and the waitress had drifted away. For not letting me drown in there. I can't swim either, Rowan said, but I'm good at shouting for ropes. Everyone was watching, Ethan murmured. It's funny. I've stood on stages in front of thousands. I've had microphones clipped to my tie and questions fired like arrows. I've never been more exposed than in front of a blinking card reader. Is offer. People think money is a coat, Rowan said. But the wind finds you, no matter what you wear. Ethan studied him. You talk like you used to teach. I used to fix things, Rowan said. Machines, mostly. Then houses. Then nerves, when I could. Teaching sneaks in when you do enough of that. What happened? Ethan asked, then flinched. I'm sorry. You don't owe me an answer. Everyone asks like it's one thing, Rowan said. A single bad day. It's more like he searched for the right image and found it. Like a rope fraying. You don't notice at first. Then one morning you're holding threads and you can't remember what it felt like to be held. Ethan swallowed. I know something about ropes. The coffee steamed between them. Outside, a wind nudged the diner sign until it squealed. The waitress refilled without comment and left a stack of creamers like little moons. I'm not a charity, Rowan said quietly. I'll take a meal when it's offered, but I pay back what I can with the next useful thing. Then do this, Ethan said. Let me hire you for an afternoon. I have a thing that needs fixing. What kind of thing? Ethan's eyes flicked down, embarrassed. A playground, he said. Behind a building I own. It's neglected, and I don't know how to make it better without turning it into a press release. Will you look at it? Tell me what it needs. Tell me what I'm not seeing. Rowan took a slow breath. He liked swings that didn't squeak. He liked the thought of his hands making something safer than it was yesterday. What it needs, he said, is a good broom, a handful of bolts, and someone to care on purpose. The daughter different. Will you be that someone? Ethan asked. I can be that broom, Rowan said. Care will have to come from the person with the keys. Ethan smiled, finally, a real smile that pushed his eyes into the shape of honesty. I have those. They ate then Rowan, quickly. Ethan, after hunger returned, to find him sitting there waiting. The stew wasn't good, but it was warm, and warmth is a currency that spends anywhere. When they stepped back into the street, the sun had inched west, painting Maple with a soft gold even the cracked sidewalks could wear proudly. "Tomorrow," Ethan said. "Noon. Behind the brick building with the blue mural, the one of the birds." "I know it," Rowan said. Ethan hesitated. "If anyone gives you trouble, if security—" "Sir," Rowan said gently, "I've been trouble to people who needed it for a long time. I'll be fine." He lifted 2 fingers to his brow in a little salute, then turned toward the train trestle where the day's wind was already waiting for him. He could feel the rope in his pocket, the frayed one he'd been holding for years, twist, then tighten, then hold. Not because anything magical had happened, because someone had looked at him and seen a broom, not a burden. He added a line to his notebook before sleep. "Bought milk for a man who forgot he was human for a minute. Reminded him. Promised to fix swings." Under the trestle, the damp air smelled like rain that might come and might not. Above, the last train of the evening rattled the bolts. Rowan tucked his coat under his head, closed his eyes, and let the day fold itself neatly. Tomorrow wasn't a promise. It was work. He preferred it that way. Rowan woke to the train's first complaint and the river's small applause. He lay under the trestle for 1 breath longer than usual, letting the cold speak its piece, then folded his blanket, shook the damp from his coat, and sat up. He checked his pocket, pencil stub, notebook. The photograph softened to velvet by handling. He added the new line from last night to yesterday's page. Promised to fix swings, as if writing it made the promise sturdier. He sorted his tools the way some men say prayers. A flathead screwdriver with a chipped edge. A crescent wrench that clicked if you looked at it wrong. A coil of twine. 2 zip ties saved from a recycling bin. A spoon he'd hammered into a pry bar. He tied them into a canvas roll with thread pulled from his coat hem. It wasn't a toolbox. It was a vote of confidence. He set off before the bakery hung its fresh loaves sign. On Maple, he paused at the blue mural building to look without being seen. Birds with impossible wingspans flew across brick and into a sky that didn't belong to the town. Below, a chain-link fence guarded a square of neglect. Cracked rubber tiles, a slide silvered by weather, 2 swing chains, 1 seat missing, the other dangling by a single bolt that looked eager to resign. Dandelions had claimed the sandbox like squatters who paid in seeds. He liked it, not the broken pieces, but the way the problem declared itself honestly. Nothing here pretended to be fine. Security saw him before noon. "Hey, off the fence." The guard was broad-shouldered and bored, his badge crisp, his eyes doing the math of liability. Playgrounds closed. "I'm not climbing," Rowan said. Hands open, palms up. "I'm looking for the broom." The guard squinted. "What?" "Mr. Vale asked me to meet him. Fix some things. I'm the broom." "Sure you are." The guard radioed something half-hearted, then frowned at Rowan's shoes, which were more mended than original. "You got ID?" "NR." Rowan patted his pockets, as if a license might have sprouted overnight. "Just one. It says Rowan on the inside of my head." The guard's reply was cut short by Ethan's voice. "He's with me." Ethan Vale came down the steps with coat off and sleeves pushed up, as if he'd meant to carry something and then remembered he owned a company that paid people to carry things. Still, his face had more color than yesterday, and some soft weight had slid off his shoulders. "Good morning," Ethan said. Not too loud, not performative. He handed the guard a quick nod and Rowan a lanyard. Visitor badge, it convinces doors. Rowan looped it over his head like a joke he could live with. They unlocked the gate together. The hinges protested. "That's your first villain," Rowan said, pointing. "Noise makes fear. Silence makes safety." Ethan pulled out a small notepad. "Should I be taking notes?" "Only if it helps you listen," Rowan said. "First things first." "Bolts?" Ethan guessed. "Broom," Rowan replied. He found one leaning in the custodian closet, bristles sleepy with dust. For the next 20 minutes he swept as if he were writing a letter the wind could read. He didn't do it because Ethan watched Rowan forgot he was there or because the guard did Rowan ignored him entirely. He did it because order was a kindness. You could offer a place, same as you offered a person. Bits of glass surfaced, shy and mean. He kneeled without ceremony, used the spoon bar to coax them into a cracked yogurt tub. He found a syringe cap, and his hands paused for the smallest fraction of a second. Then moved on old habit. Don't make danger into theater. He dropped it in a second tub he labeled with a marker. Ethan produced sharps. "We'll take these to the clinic," he said. "Not the trash." 2 children watched from the other side of the fence, fingers hooked through chain link, faces level with the top diamonds. A mother stood behind them, arms folded, assessing. Rowan met the kid's stares and tipped his head. "This playground's a dragon," he said conversationally. "You 2 knights good at following rules?" One nodded vigorously. The other examined his shoelaces, then nodded too because the first had. "You'll listen?" Rowan said. "Yes, sir," the first boy whispered. "Then rule 1. You don't come inside a gate until I say go. If I say stop, you say it louder than me. Deal?" "Deal," the boys chorused, already pleased with the responsibility of shouting. The mother stepped forward, cautious. "Who are you?" "Rowan," he said. "Temporary broom." Her eyes flicked to Ethan. "And you're letting a vagrant broom around kids?" she asked him, mouth edging toward scorn. "No offense, sir." "Likely necessary offense," Rowan said. He didn't flinch. "You're right to ask." Ethan did not bristle. "He's contracted," he said simply, "and supervised. You're welcome to watch, or help. Up to you." She kept her arms folded for one more second than pride required. "I'll watch." Good," Rowan said. "Could you also hold this?" He handed her the yogurt tub of glass. Delegation was a kind of dignity. Rowan mapped the fixes. Hinge pins needed oil. A slide bolt wore a halo of rust that meant it would snap if asked too much. The swing's remaining seat was grooved by years of worried hands. The missing one needed not just hardware, but a promise not to bite small fingers. He scribbled a list in tidy block letters that looked like he'd written more important things in that same hand. He had some bolts and washers in his pouch. Not everything. "We'll need a hardware store run," he told Ethan. "Half-inch carriage bolts, lock nuts, fender washers, and silicone grease, if God loves us." "Got it," Ethan said too quickly. "I'll send someone." Rowan looked at him. "If this becomes an errand you give to a person you've never met, it loses something." Ethan's mouth twitched, chastened and amused. "I'll go." "Take one of the knights," Rowan said, nodding toward the fence. "They'll choose the shiniest washers. That's good for morale." The mother's folded arms unfolded. "I'll go," she said, surprising herself. "I know the owner at Dumont Hardware. He'll give a discount if I scowl." "Excellent," Rowan said. "We'll hold the fort." When they left, Rowan tackled the hinge first. He cleaned the pin with a rag, improvised a reamer with that spoon again, and worked the hinge back and forth until the squeal turned into cooperation. He unbolted the swing chains, replaced a cracked link with a solid one from the bottom of the set where no hand would find it, and sanded the burrs on the slide seam with a scrap of emery cloth he'd kept since emery cloth was common. "You fix things like you're apologizing to them," the security guard observed from a distance that said, "I'm watching, and also I'm interested." "Machines remember being betrayed," Rowan said. "You go slow, they forgive faster." The guard snorted. "You talk weird. Talking is free." He paused for water, because stopping before you were empty was a skill, not a weakness. He scrawled in his notebook, "Hinges quieted. Slight safeish. Chains. Truer." And circled ish to remind himself not to lie. Ethan returned with the mother and boys and a small brown bag that clinked. The boys spilled washers into Rowan's palm as if giving him treasure. The mother, who introduced herself as Anna Ortiz, handed him the silicone grease with a satisfaction that felt like victory. "Dumont tried to charge full price," she said. "I told him I'd tell his wife." "Effective negotiation technique," Rowan said gravely. They set the new swing seat together. Rowan showed the boys how to hold the end of the bolt with a screwdriver through the chain link for leverage while he tightened from the other side. He let them take one turn each on the wrench, carefully, hands guided, safety preached without panic. He did not touch the kids beyond what the moment required. Boundaries were another kind of bolt. The seat hung perfect and level when they were done. Rowan tugged it with his weight. It held. "Don't test it with a tiger," he told the boys. "Only with joy." "Can we?" the first boy asked, vibrating. "In a minute," Rowan said. "We finish the set. We test together. We tell the fence knights to sound the alarm if anyone trips. That's the job." Word had spread while bolts turned. 2 strollers parked by the fence. A grandfather glanced up from a newspaper, like he remembered swings differently. Teenagers in matching hoodies cut a lazy S pattern along the sidewalk and stopped just out of respect range. One of them was the varsity jacket kid from the grocery store. His smirk was dialed down today. Curiosity had eaten some of it. "Yo," the kid said to Ethan, who had found himself carrying the hardware bag and liking it. "You hiring playground mechanics now?" "Looks that way," Ethan said dryly. "Hope there's a salary band for guy who saved your milk," the kid muttered, almost to himself. Rowan pretended not to hear. Pride bends easier if you don't watch it. By late afternoon, the dragon had lost a few teeth. Hinges whispered. Chains sang in a tuned metal hum instead of a scream. The slide sent one of the boys down smooth enough to make him laugh in surprise at his own speed. "All right," Rowan said, stepping back. "Line up. 2 at a time for swings. Small bodies first, big bodies later. If anyone jumps, they shout, 'Coming out!' before their feet leave the seat. We practice with walking before we practice flying." The gate opened for the first time in forever without scaring itself. The children filed in, careful because rules had been offered like trust. When the first swing lifted and fell, the whole square of tired brick and chain link felt it, a change like new weather. Rowan didn't take credit. He knelt by the sandbox and sifted the top inch with his fingers. Fishing out a bottle cap and a piece of plastic that had once belonged to something useful, Anna crouched beside him without being asked, hands already knowing what to look for. "Thank you," she said after a while, not looking at him, looking at the sand. "For what?" he asked. "For showing my boys how to do something right. And for not minding that, I minded you." "Minding is a mother's hinge," Rowan said. It squeaks when it matters. She smiled despite herself. You're strange. Occupational hazard. Ethan stood beneath the bluebirds and watched the small order take root. On his phone, 3 messages blinked with board member names attached. One subject line read, Optics? Another, Liability Exposure. A third had a link. A short video posted by an account he didn't recognize. Varsity Jacket Kid from The Angle, and the shaky bravado captioned, Rich Dude's card declines. Homeless guy pays his milk. 10,000 views in an hour. Comments all teeth and halo alternating. Ethan slid the phone into his pocket and looked at Rowan. Sleeves rolled up past his wrists. Grease a dark crescent under one nail. Talking a nervous child through the first climb up the ladder and the first brave slide down. No speeches, no cameras, just work. Mr. Vale? The security guard had walked over, hat in his hands like the air inside the fence required a different uniform. You know, there'll be folks who say you can't let, a man like him, Ethan said evenly, build this day. The guard nodded, chastened, relieved to be told what to believe. They stayed until the light softened and the first mother called time because soup didn't wait for swing finales. Rowan locked the gate and handed the key back to Ethan without ceremony. Tomorrow? Ethan asked, almost shy. There's a bench that looks like it's lost a leg. Benches like to be believed in, Rowan said. Tomorrow. He tucked his notebook away with a new line. Swing sang. Boys shouted, stop louder than me. Mothers uncrossed arms. Hinge forgiven. On the walk back to the trestle, the varsity kid caught up without his friend. Hey, he said, not meeting Rowan's eyes. He held out something, a pack of zip ties, for, in case a dragon needs gentle handcuffs. Rowan took them as if they were gold. Thank you, he said, and meant it so much the boy flinched. Whatever, the kid muttered, but he stood a little taller as he left. Under the bridge, night arranged itself. Rowan rolled in his blanket and found the rope inside him frayed, then mended, now bearing load. He thought of the video pulsing through other people's phones like a heartbeat he couldn't control. He thought of optics and exposure and keys. He thought of the bench with its shy limp and smiled. Tomorrow wasn't a promise. It was another bolt to tighten, another hinge to coax, another broom to push through a space until it remembered itself. He preferred it that way. The next morning began with rain that sounded like a polite argument against the roof of the trestle. Rowan lay on his side, listening. Rain made some people hurry, but it slowed him down. It washed the alleys and quieted the dogs, and for an hour the town seemed to breathe without asking him to move. He checked his notebook. The last line read, Swing sang. Boys shouted stop louder than me. Mothers uncrossed arms. Hinge forgiven. He touched the words with his thumb, like a man testing a knot. Then he added a new line for the day's goal. Benchleg believes again. By the time he reached the Bluebird mural, the rain had passed. Puddles collected the sky in broken circles. The chain-link fence glistened, and the playground smelled of wet rust and damp joy. Ethan was waiting with a toolbox that looked fresh from the catalog. He held it awkwardly, as though he feared he might insult the tools by gripping them too hard. You came early, Ethan said. You came heavy, Rowan replied, nodding at the box. Tools like to think they're chosen, not purchased. Don't scare them. Ethan gave a short laugh. You're the only person I've met who makes hammers sound like pets. They are, Rowan said, lifting the lid and stroking a wrench as if greeting an old friend. They follow the hand's lead, betray them, and they bite. The bench sat under the mural, One leg splayed like it had decided to sit down instead of hold anyone. Rowan crouched beside it, tracing the grain of the wood, feeling where rot had crept in. "Splintered," he murmured. "Not broken. That's better." He explained his plan: cut back the rot, sister the leg with a new piece, bolt it through. Ethan listened, scribbling notes like he might be quizzed later. "You don't have to write it down," Rowan said. "I do," Ethan admitted. "If I don't, I'll forget that small things can be fixed without starting over." Rowan gave him a look. "You're not talking about the bench." "No," Ethan said quietly. They worked together, Rowan guiding, Ethan learning. Rowan showed him how to brace the leg with his knee so the bolt didn't wander. He let Ethan drive the wrench, correcting his grip gently, never mocking. When Ethan's hand slipped and barked his knuckle, Rowan tore a strip from his own sleeve and wrapped it before the man could protest. "You patch people like you patch wood," Ethan said. "Everything splinters," Rowan replied. "That doesn't mean you throw it away." By mid-morning, children had gathered again at the fence. The same boys, the same mother with her folded arms, though they unfolded sooner this time. New faces, too. Teenagers in hoodies, a woman in scrubs fresh from a night shift, an old man with a cane who muttered that the bench had once been his spot to read the paper. The varsity jacket kid was there as well, phone in hand, filming in bursts. His friend teased him for caring, but the camera kept rising. Inside the fence, Rowan and Ethan set the last bolt, tightened it until the washer sang, and then stood back. Rowan pressed on the bench with his weight. It held. "Moment of truth," he said. The old man with the cane tapped the fence. "Let me." They let him in. He lowered himself onto the bench, the cane across his knees, and sat in silence. Then he nodded once, solemn, as if granting a blessing. "It holds." Applause rose, ragged but real. The boys cheered. The teenagers whistled. Even the mother smiled. Ethan looked at Rowan, wonder in his eyes. "You didn't just fix a bench. You restored a memory." Rowan shrugged. Benches like to remember. But the moment did not belong only to them. By noon, the video from the grocery store, the one of Rowan paying for Ethan's milk, had gone viral. News vans appeared at the curb, cameras swiveling like vultures spotting a meal. Reporters shouted questions through the fence. "Mr. Vale, is it true your card was declined? Who is this homeless man? Why is he here? Is this a publicity stunt?" Rowan froze mid-step, a bolt still in his hand. He hated cameras. They made people into stories, not people. He started toward the gate, ready to slip away, but Ethan stopped him. "Wait," Ethan said. "If you leave now, they'll write the story without you." "I don't belong in stories," Rowan muttered. "You belong in the truth," Ethan countered. The crowd pressed closer, microphones like bayonets. Rowan felt the old instinct to shrink, to vanish. But then he saw the boys at the swing set, watching with wide eyes. He saw Anna with her arms no longer folded, her hands resting lightly on her son's shoulders. He saw the old man still sitting proudly on the repaired bench. He drew a slow breath. "One sentence," he told Ethan. "No more." Ethan nodded. Rowan stepped to the fence. His beard dripped with sweat. His coat hung in tatters. But his voice was steady. "I'm just a man with a broom and a bolt," he said. "Places break, people break, but nothing stays broken if someone cares enough to mend it." Silence fell, heavy and electric. Cameras whirred, reporters scribbled, and then the shouting began again, louder than before, but Rowan had already stepped back. "That's all," he said. "Stories are longer when you live them." The crowd outside swelled. Commentators debated on live TV whether Rowan was a symbol of hope or a liability. Some praised Ethan for uplifting the downtrodden. Others sneered, calling it poverty theater. Inside the playground, children didn't care. They laughed on swings, slid down slides, dug trenches in the sand. They weren't watching optics. They were living better. Ethan paced, phone buzzing with calls from board members. They want me to cut ties, he admitted. They say you're unpredictable, that you'll embarrass me. Rowan tightened the last nut on the slide rail. You already were embarrassed. Remember the card reader? Ethan chuckled, despite himself. Point taken. He grew serious. They don't understand what you've done here. How do I explain it? You don't, Rowan said. You show them. Fix more than one bench. Build more than one place. People don't believe words, they believe roofs that don't leak. Ethan stared at him. You should be leading this, not me. I'm no leader, Rowan said softly. I'm a broom. Leaders hold the keys. Ethan looked down at the keys in his pocket. For the first time, he wondered if he had been holding them for the wrong doors. As the sun leaned west, the news vans finally retreated. The playground quieted. Rowan sat on the fixed bench, notebook in hand, pencil scratching. He wrote, Bench held an old man. Swings held joy. My face held cameras. I held. Anna came over, wiping sand from her hands. You spoke well, she said. I spoke short, Rowan replied. That's why it worked. She hesitated. You know, you've changed this place. My boys want to come every day now. And people are talking more about fixing the basketball court, the library steps, even the bus shelter. They want you to help. Rowan shook his head. I can't fix everything. No, Anna agreed. But you make people believe they can. Her words sat with him long after she left. That night, under the trestle, Rowan opened his notebook again. He stared at the empty line waiting to be filled. For years, his entries had been private proofs that his life still mattered. But today the world had looked and listened. He wrote slowly, carefully. Sometimes usefulness is not hiding under a bridge. Sometimes it is standing in the sun, even if the sun burns. He closed the book and lay back, the damp concrete hard beneath him, but his chest strangely light. Tomorrow, he knew, the town would ask more. The board would resist more. The cameras would return. And somewhere between splinters and spectacles, he would have to decide if being a broom was enough or if he had to become something more. Morning came sharp and bright, the kind that made every crack in the pavement glint like it had secrets. Rowan rubbed the sleep from his eyes beneath the trestle and sat up slower than usual. His ribs ached from damp concrete, but the ache was softened by something else, anticipation. The town was whispering his name now. He had never wanted that, but he could feel it in the air. The way people at the soup line nudged each other when he passed. The way the barista at the cafe window didn't shoo him away, but instead asked if he wanted a cup of yesterday's brew. Even the varsity kid had nodded once, a sharp jerk of the chin, like respect forced out of him against his will. Still, Rowan reminded himself, I'm a broom, not a crown. He checked his notebook. Yesterday's line waited for him. Sometimes usefulness is not hiding under a bridge. Sometimes it is standing in the sun, even if the sun burns. He touched it with his thumb, then flipped to a blank page. He wrote, Today, something will test the hinges. At the playground, Ethan was already pacing. His phone buzzed like a trapped insect. The board wanted an emergency meeting. Words like liability and PR disaster were being tossed like grenades. They're threatening to vote me out as CEO, Ethan admitted, running a hand through his hair. They say letting you stay is reckless. Rowan crouched at the sandbox, coaxing out a rusted soda can tab. He spoke without looking up. They're right. It is reckless. Caring usually is. Ethan sank onto the fixed bench, shoulders slumped. I built this company from nothing, but I've never felt as alive as when we tightened that bolt on the swing. Then maybe bolts are more important than boardrooms, Rowan said. Ethan laughed weakly. Try telling that to investors. Rowan finally looked at him. Do you want to keep your empire, or do you want to keep your soul? The question hung heavier than any board vote. By afternoon, the playground was alive again, children swinging, mothers chatting, teenagers pretending not to care. Anna brought sandwiches for everyone, even Rowan, who tried to refuse until she pressed one into his hand with a glare. News crews returned, but this time they didn't shout. They filmed quietly, lenses capturing the unlikely scene. A billionaire in rolled-up sleeves pushing a child on a swing. A homeless man repairing the ladder to the slide. Strangers working side by side without a script. But inside Ethan's phone, war raged. His assistant's voice crackled. The board is voting in 2 hours. They expect you present. They want you to denounce this experiment. Ethan looked at Rowan. If I don't, I lose everything. Rowan brushed sawdust from his palms. If you do, you lose more. At 6 o'clock sharp, Ethan stood in the gleaming glass conference room downtown. The long table gleamed like a polished threat. Faces around it were sharp with money, eyes narrowed with calculation. Mr. Vale, the chairman began, voice smooth as marble. We are here because your actions have endangered this company's reputation. Allowing a vagrant to represent us is unacceptable. Rowan was not there. He sat under the mural with Anna's boys, showing them how to knot a rope without cutting it. But his words echoed in Ethan's head. Bolts or boardrooms. Soul or empire. Ethan cleared his throat. You see a vagrant. I see a teacher. A builder. A man who reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Murmurs rippled like wind over glass. This is not about charity, Ethan pressed on. This is about truth. We claim to improve communities, yet we do it from towers while the ground rots beneath us. Rowan fixed a swing, and in doing so, he restored trust, something money alone has never bought. The chairman's jaw tightened. So you're choosing him over us? Ethan straightened. I'm choosing what's right. If that costs me my title, so be it. The silence that followed was a storm held in glass. Some directors stared in shock, others in disgust, one or two with something close to admiration. The vote proceeded. The result was brutal. Ethan was removed. But when he stepped out of the building into the evening air, he felt taller than when he had walked in. Back at the playground, Rowan saw him approach. Tie loosened, coat folded over his arm like an afterthought. Children still played. Parents still watched. The bench still held. You lost, Rowan said simply. I won, Ethan replied. They sat side by side on the bench, silence settling between them like a comfortable blanket. What now? Rowan asked. Ethan looked at the children. We build more. Not for profit. For people. Playgrounds. Shelters. Libraries. Real places. You'll need a broom, Rowan said. And a teacher, Ethan added. Not just of bolts and hinges, but of hope. Rowan shook his head. I'm no teacher. Anna, who had been listening from nearby, walked over and crossed her arms, not in suspicion this time, but in certainty. You already are. My boys talk about you more than their school teachers. You've taught them that broken things don't stay broken. That's more valuable than any lesson in a book." Rowan's throat tightened. For years, he had written in his notebook just to prove to himself he still mattered. Now someone else believed it too. In the weeks that followed, the playground became the first of many. Word spread not through press releases, but through laughter. Children swinging again, benches holding again. Lives being patched instead of discarded. Volunteers came, students, carpenters, even the varsity kid, who now carried a tool belt with pride. Ethan sold off pieces of his empire, redirecting the money into what he and Rowan began calling the Mend Project. Not charity, not pity, simply usefulness turned outward. Rowan moved out from under the trestle, not into a mansion, not into luxury, but into a small room above the diner. He still carried his notebook, still wrote his lines each night, fixed railing at the library, showed Anna's boys how to level a board, reminded Ethan that bolts don't care about stock prices. The cameras lost interest eventually. The world always looked away after the spectacle faded. But that was fine. Rowan didn't need the spotlight. He needed hinges to quiet, bolts to tighten, splinters to smooth. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mural, Ethan sat beside him on the bench. Children's laughter filled the air. "You once said you were just a broom," Ethan reminded him. Rowan smiled, beard catching the last light. "Still am. But even a broom can clear a path if you use it long enough." He closed his notebook with a soft thump, leaned back, and let the sound of swings and shouts wash over him. For the first time in years, he felt not like a man surviving, but like a man living. And above them, the painted birds on the mural seemed to fly a little higher.